You might overlook fiends just purely based on their stats at first glance, but they are a very strong unit for a number of reasons. Of course, in Domination, monstrous infantry counts as infantry for capture power, and as 95 speed monstrous infantry, they are some of the fastest +6 capture power units in the game. Not to mention, of course, only 36 might not seem great, but you essentially increase both of those stats by 5 because of the Soporific Musk melee contact effect, which is very nice. Of course, as Slaanesh demons, they also get devastating flanker with 38 charge in the side and rear, can definitely do some damage. 20% physical resistance, of course, being demons as well with 55 AP, definitely very solid. And of course, again, being demons, they are not strictly unbreakable, not technically, but essentially unbreakable, right? They will only take banishment damage, and given that they have 60 leadership, it's going to be pretty hard to get them to do so in the first place. Today, I'm up against Kislev. We've got a Herald of Slaanesh, Lore of Shadows. We're going all in this time against the humans for the Pendulum Cheese. I've also got a Cultist of Slaanesh for a summon, another one in reserve. 2 anti-infantry marauders and 1 anti-large marauder, also in the starting army. In reserve, we've got a Soul Grinder, another Fiend, and some Hellstriders, of course, the anti-large Hellstriders. Immune to Psychology. They do not have Devastating Flanker, which I think I missaid in a video the other day, but they do have the Soul Hunter's passive. As they get kills, they will get damage resistance and leadership and charge bonus. They are very squishy, though, but with anti-large and poison damage, they should trade pretty well into Kislev Cavalry. We've also got some Slaanesh AP, OP Furies to rear charge cavalry as well. Since Kislev doesn't have any flying, we'll be able to dictate quite a bit with them. Some more Marauder Infantry, 4 Spears, 1 Whip, and another Anti-Infantry. For Kislev here, coming in with Katarine, Quad, Winged Lancers, and 3 Horse Archers. So all cavalry force initially, then reinforcing with almost all infantry. We've got 3 Kossar Spears, an Ice Guard, Glaive, 2 Griffin Legion, 3 Zarguard, 2 Armored Kossars, and 3 Kossovite Dervishes. So let's jump in to the Mountains of Morn and take a look. You guys may have seen me get absolutely trolled and then sort of learn something in this matchup the other day on my stream, if you were watching. Essentially, what I learned is that from Kislev's perspective, you want to try and mass ranged units, like cheap ranged units, just to provide saturation of missile fire against Slaanesh, of course. Slaanesh generally lacking any armor. The only armored unit you have at all is the Soul Grinder. And so therefore, it stands to reason then that the sort of wide shooting of Kislev could be quite good here. The other thing to note about Kislev, sort of applies to Tzeentch as well, is that a lot of the shooting units being hybrid and having decent enough melee stats, Slaanesh's strategy of just purely rushing down and murdering the ranged units isn't going to work as well versus those 2 factions as it would against, say, Cathay or future factions like the Empire, dwarfs, you know, your traditional ranged units would be a little bit squishier in comparison in melee. And now, on the opening here, this is going to be probably one of the most technical, like, positioning games I've ever seen. If anyone ever tells you that Domination doesn't involve any tactics or positioning whatsoever, like, please just show them this game, because we're about to witness quite the display of cavalry control here. I'm going to push up and utilize the Herald of Slaanesh. We've got 1 quick summon of some Hellstriders in here to try and cut off the retreat of these Horse Archers. At 100 speed with poison damage, this Herald here can definitely catch these Horse Archers, not to mention with Melkoth's Mystifying Miasma hitting 1 unit here and slowing them down while dealing some damage. We do manage to not get the poison contact effect, interestingly enough. Oh, nope, there it is. Okay, popped up, unfortunately not at the same time. So we did not actually stack those 2 together, really. But we're going to pull back. I don't want to overcommit and get a bad engagement, of course. With Slaanesh, the most important thing, even more so than capturing the points, is the focus on trading cost effectively. So we're going to do just that. Bring up the Marauders here to screen the Horse Archers. I'm arguably taking a little unnecessary damage here on the Herald, coming forward and summoning some Furies, again, just to kind of forward pressure and take a commanding position, so to speak. We've got more Hellstriders coming in for my opponent here. He's got some Ice Guard moving up. So relatively expensive, but that Frostbite should help him control the flow of this battle here before the engagement develops. So we're both just kind of positioning here. You can see me kind of moving up and flanking a little bit with these Hellstriders, trying to get into a position to perhaps fully envelop. But again, I don't want to overcommit and get into a bad engagement on his spawn where he can keep bringing units in. And he hasn't summoned much besides the Ice Guard, so I know he's probably banking some points, some supply here to be able to bring in a sizable force. But let's take a look and see. I mean, I guess, really, I've just summoned the 2 Hellstriders as well, so maybe we're actually even in terms of summon value, but the actual summoned Furies here, like ability summoned Furies, are just going to get torn apart, waste some of the ammunition of these Horse Archers. Kislev Horse Archers do have relatively limited ammunition, though, so this is actually not the worst. It's not great, but it's not terrible, to be honest, so that's fine. And the points are about to come online. A lot of people will tell you with Slaanesh that you want to play from behind, right? Which is to let your opponent capture the points and then try and utilize the supply catch-up mechanic. I'm not the biggest fan of that playstyle. I think it's a little bit tricky to execute if you don't have really good micro. For me, I've found more success with Slaanesh just focusing on trading effectively more than anything else. Like, yes, you need to focus on capturing points as well, but your mobility allows you to gain a huge amount of map control. Like, I've even got one more Hellstrider just hiding in the woods over here, waiting to see if anything develops from Kislev to come capture this point number 1. At the same time, though, I'm going to be aware of the catch-up mechanic and not try and feed my opponent here too many points. You can see I've capped this center objective, but I'm not fully committing in to try and actually cap this point number 3 yet. We're just, again, lots of cavalry positioning, Hellstriders moving up to try and, again, get an envelopment, maybe cut off some of these chokes, but my opponent here doing a great job keeping his Horse Archers well enough away and defending also with these Winged Lancers, which, especially if I get side or rear charged by the Lancers, these Hellstriders will get annihilated. So, definitely, again, want to focus on getting a good trade there. But infantry had pulled back initially, but we're now going to push forward once again. My opponent's bringing in some more infantry units to try and potentially move up and secure here. But both just kind of patiently playing at this point. Lots of, again, positioning all over the place. We're going to bring the Herald up here on the side and perhaps collapse with these Hellstriders as well. They're not capping this point number 1 super fast, although I am putting a little bit of capture weight into it. Same thing over here with point number 3. We haven't fully capped it, but we're part of the way there. So if I wanted to, I could swoop in and easily capture it pretty quickly. But looks like I may actually go for the 3 cap here initially if my opponent plays a little bit too passively. Because a lot of people will think that, like, oh, the way to keep Slaanesh from abusing the catch-up mechanic is to actually not cap the points, but then you'd allow Slaanesh to cap the points, and you get into a position here where Kislev could potentially get pretty far behind early on. Again, though, I'm going to be feeding them extra supply. I have 2,500 currently banked, and since we're not really taking any engagements so far, I haven't really felt the need to spend it, but we are going to start to get some engagements here in the center. Kossars, Lancers moving up, moving back my anti-infantry Marauders to saturate with the anti-large Marauders. And the Hellstriders coming in very fast around the rock for a rear charge. Man, look at the speed on those guys. Absolutely insane. My opponent does countercharge here at the last second, which is the right call. Even though they don't have devastating flanker, they're still going to take a lot of damage on that countercharge, so that's pretty good. But the Herald comes in here with the Chariot to disrupt. We get some Penumbral Pendulums as well to just OP delete those Ice Guards. Oh yeah, auto slow-mo at the perfect moment to just watch those Ice Guards get deleted. We're also going to use Pavane there just to make sure they go into a rage and can't continue to fire. Just nice big charge here. Meanwhile, out on the other side, we've got some Fiends. The Fiends had switched over to this point number 2. Captured it, and the Hellstriders are coming up. We're going to get a little bit of an engagement in this choke. Not too worried about the Fiends fighting armored Kossars. These Hellstriders will definitely take a beating, though. You can see them getting blasted by pistols as they move in. And the Fiends as well. You can see more Griffin Legion reinforcing out on the far side. So let's keep both of these engagements in view. I've summoned up some Demonettes as well, and they actually interrupted the charge of those Winged Lancers without eating the charge. So although they didn't get their own devastating flanker, they still, the summon was quite nice there. That being said, Katarina has come forward and caught my Herald in melee, which is definitely not what I want. The Herald, even with the perfect Vigor Chariot, obviously quite squishy, and with 100 speed, there's no reason for me to be taking this engagement other than my micro slipped up momentarily, so we're going to go ahead and just run away and detach some spears to saturate Katarina, maybe try and pin her in place if we can. But anyway, over here, my opponent just wrecked some of my Hellstriders with some Winged Lancers, and he's coming back in with some Kossars and the Horse Archers sitting as well, chilling for the time being. Over here, he's got some calcified dervishes moving up to try and secure this location, perhaps. These Hellstriders don't really have enough models, I don't think, to even count for any capture weight. But another Pendulum here in the center, just devastating this contingent of cavalry. And we do have some Kossars within range. The biggest thing for me is just to not allow my Herald to get shot up too much. I'm really not worried at all about the Marauders, to be honest. But I just want to try and protect my Herald, at least for a little bit longer, until I use all the Winds of Magic. She's already generated almost 1,900 points worth of damage value. It's pretty good stuff there. More actual Slaanesh Furies coming in as well. Again, to rear charge cavalry and the Zargard here. The Zargard with their heavy armor will be pretty formidable opponents to these Marauders of Slaanesh. But of course, Slaanesh having lots of AP units certainly beneficial in a situation like this. But a heavy Kislev presence, a lot of value here controlling point number 1. So I'm going to have to concede this area, at least for the time being, and develop some more Marauders to try and come back and counter push. I've also got some Fiends there waiting in the wings, ready to engage. No one has managed to cap this point number 1 yet, which is, you know, okay, I guess. It's my opponent hasn't managed to cap any points at all so far, so I am getting pretty far ahead. But that also means, again, that he's getting a lot of catch-up mechanic, and we haven't been trading. I mean, it's been a trade in favor of me for sure, but not wildly so. Like, it's been relatively even, all things considered. Another Pendulum there doesn't do too much. But the charge of the Herald Chariot, as I mentioned in my video the other day, against Cathay, very good against the mortal factions, in my opinion. Gonna charge up through that choke with the Fiends fighting in the foreground. Man, this game is awesome. Can't wait for the other factions to get added as well, but they have such a good base to work with here. They've done the demon factions, in my opinion, pretty well. Like, yes, there's some issues for sure, but all of the demon factions seem to play very well in their intended playstyle, which is nice to see. Anyway, at this point, I don't really mind leaving the Herald too much. He's actually not taking a ton of damage there right now because of the sort of low DPS output of the Kossars in melee, but we're going to go ahead and pull away, try and get one last Pendulum through this choke as the Marauder push in the center develops. And yeah, there's the Pendulum there. Does pretty good damage, nothing too crazy, but at this point, I've pretty much used all my magic, so don't mind if the Herald gets disintegrated, which she will. We just have to focus on holding even just one objective at this point. I'm far enough ahead on points that I can pretty much just take the one objective and hold it, but even still, you know, just putting enough capture weight on the center objective with all of these Marauders here to outnumber the cavalry of Kislev. And there's Zargard, yes, but one thing to note about elite infantry in this game mode, like, yes, it can be good situationally, but it seems like just flooding the field with cheap infantry to get a lot of capture power. Yes, you can get run over by a high shock build, but at the same time, for certain factions yet to come, like vampire counts, I could see that being a very strong strategy. At the very least, though, we're able to not only just flood the infantry onto the point here, but actually trade pretty well with the help of the Fiends. Over here, more cavalry engagements developing, and just the Fiends in general. I mean, I know I talked about them initially, and the title may end up being about them. We'll see. They have just been absolutely all over the place. You guys have seen them running around getting tons of value. This unit in a engagement against dervishes isn't the most cost-effective, but this other unit of Fiends over here has been more or less, together with the Herald and, you know, the Hellstriders, holding down this objective against a massive cavalry force. So they've done a great job. In sustained combat, too, they're one of the few units of Slaanesh that, because of that soporific musk, they can trade well into a lot of units in sustained combat, especially like these cavalry, for example, right? 29-27 with that soporific musk active on those Griffin Legion means that they're just, you know, they're missing out on their charge bonus, too, obviously, so it's really not great for them. The soporific musk is also on the Soul Grinder of Slaanesh, which has summoned here into the center for anti-large AP. Just did a ton of damage to Tsarina Katarine there. Over here we're getting some more cavalry engagements. Hellstriders charging into Winged Lancers. We put the Fascination on them to make them enrage. and to do a little bit of extra damage, but even still, that was a relatively bloody trade for me. The Fiends, again, dealing with those Dervishes just fine. Hell Scourgers ended up eating a charge, but that high melee defense, that 42 melee defense, definitely helped them not get completely wrecked by said cavalry. The Fiends over on this side finally are banished, or disintegrate, if you will. But that doesn't mean that the Furies can't come in and continue to at least just tie this up. Again, all I have to do is hold 1 point at this point, and the center objective seems to be the one for me with the Soul Grinder and all these Marauders, but even still, might as well just contest everywhere else I can on the battle so that my opponent can't bring his forces into the center objective to contest me there, right? Because everyone knows the best defense is offense. So we're going to get offensive here, real offensive with Slaanesh. Little side charge, rear charge perhaps on these Winged Lancers. That is a pretty ideal situation for those Fiends. Let's check in. These guys, 95 kills, 900 damage value so far. And Soul Grinder, again, coming in here. Nice little rear charge. At this point, pretty much got things wrapped up. So we'll just kind of take in the battlefield there. But yeah, especially like the cavalry engagements over on this side. I know I wasn't highlighting it specifically a lot, sort of looked at it a little bit here, but hopefully you guys can appreciate at least playing it. For me was a lot of fun in terms of positioning all that cavalry, microing, kind of baiting charges, pulling back. Definitely reminds me of some of the games I used to love playing in Warhammer 2, so good stuff. Marauders countercharging in here to those Winged Lancers. These Marauder Spears just ate the charge and are probably going to rout, but actually survive an impressively long amount of time. These Fiends over here had gotten into some armored cavalry and somewhat got surrounded as well, but let's check the final value, damage value on said Fiends. So keep in mind they cost 1,200, so average cost between these two, they both pay for themselves, even though strictly speaking, one of them does not. Keep in mind as well that the Soporific Musk would have helped other units to trade better, although I will say that my cavalry did not necessarily trade cost effectively in any case. All 4 of these Hellstriders, I guess one of them got 1,100 points. That's pretty decent. The Fiend I brought in as reserve, though, did end up also paying for itself. So, in my experience, Fiends will pretty consistently pay for themselves in good melee engagements, and they are definitely a very potent unit. If you have to fight anything really in melee, which is, you know, obviously any Slaanesh matchup because you don't have any missiles, so that's not very descriptive, but you know what I mean. Yeah, in general, they're great for holding objectives. They can also reposition very quickly, so in general, a lot of utility out of these guys. Definitely the highlight for me so far of Slaanesh's roster. Also, the late-game Soul Grinder is kind of the backbreaker to defeat Katarine and just make sure I held that center objective. Was quite strong. Slaanesh Fury is also pretty good here, even though they didn't end up paying for themselves. A rear charge on some cavalry or some, you know, armored infantry or whatever can be very good tactically. And then, of course, Marauder Spears, very cost-effective in this matchup against all of the cavalry. Nice to have some other Marauder varieties as well, but in general, the Slaanesh Spears, the fact that they have shields gives them an advantage over, like, Norskin Marauder Spears, and in general, they're just a really excellent low-tier spear unit. I need to do some thinking and some comparisons, but they might eventually beat out Ungor Raiders as my favorite low-tier spear. I don't know yet, we'll see. But switching to Kislev's side, Katarine here made back 2,500 damage values, so definitely pretty potent on that bear. I was a little bit skeptical of Katarine at first, thinking that Constantine would be the meta in most matchups, and I still think Constantine's quite good, but I can definitely see Katarine's place in this particular matchup in order to help control the flow of the battle. Winged Lancer has also performed pretty admirably, considering they're up against Fiends and Hellstriders, both of which are, in a way, sort of designed to counter them, and I really like the use of the Horse Archers here, too. On stream, I had tried a different sort of cav-centric opening with 3 Griffin Legion, but I think this wider cav opening is a little bit better, and definitely the Horse Archers. I mean, I was thinking, you know, on paper as well, that you can't protect Horse Archers against Slaanesh, they're too fast, but I think situationally, like on this map especially, where they're able to kind of fend through the chokes and defend with their own heavy cavalry, the Horse Archers obviously were able to do quite a bit of work, so maybe even taking more Horse Archers, honestly. And then as reserve, interestingly enough, this is one of the only battles where I've seen someone, like, summon all of their units almost. And the Sargar definitely are a no-go, I think, in this matchup. Armored infantry tends to just get eaten up by Slaanesh for the most part. Unless it's anti-large, in which case it kind of defends itself a little bit better. But the Griffin Legion, 112 kills. Surprised that didn't get more damage value there. Karslar Dervishes, I am a fan of it in this matchup just because they're cheap damage for the most part. Even the horse archers, kind of a similar vein, but just in general, if they get good charges, they can definitely do very cost-effective damage. But yeah, I think the armored Kossars, because they have a shooting attack, are just generally going to be better than the Zarguard here. Certainly more cost-effective. And Ice Guards, yeah, Magnet for Pendulum. Hopefully, once that gets nerfed, it'll be a little bit more usable. Maybe you actually take 2 Ice Guards here. I'm not really sure. I mean, if you were to option out some of these Zarguard, you would definitely have the funds to be able to do so. But anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. See you next time.